with Benefit Builders Incorporated. We're an employee benefits company. So we're going to talk mostly about healthcare. What Greg talked about, of course, is an employee benefit, but today I'm going to talk about basically the core benefits of health insurance as the main thing. There are others, obviously, the ancillary ones, but it's a crazy world ever since the Affordable Care Act was introduced about 6 years ago. Here's some trends. A couple of things that I'm going to cover in the very beginning are just probably kind of common knowledge, kind of gloss over these, but these are some trends. There's been for some time now cost shifting going on, where employers are shifting costs to employees in a variety of ways, either more payroll deductions or with higher out-of-pocket costs on their health plans. The reduction in benefits is a way to compensate for higher costs and increase in costs. There's some movement, considerable movement toward what they call high deductible health plans. So you see employers reducing contributions. The part of the premium that they will pay used to be maybe 100%, 80, 90%. Today we see a lot of employers by necessity reducing their contributions to 50%, which is the minimum that the insurance companies for a group plan require. And some of them are eliminating contributions for dependents. They'll still make a contribution to the employee cost, but let the employee completely payroll deduct the cost of their dependents, and that could be quite a significant amount of money. Further, we're just seeing increasing deductibles, office visit co-pays, co-insurance, drug co-pays. Many are eliminating some of the ancillary plans. If they had a nice rounded package with health and dental and disability and vision, some are saying, well, the cost of health is going up so fast every year in double digits, can't afford to provide everything, so I'm going to drop dental or disability or vision. So this is another problem that's related to what Greg was talking about. They're also reducing reducing the pension plans that they do as well. The movement to HDAP, sometimes they will introduce a high deductible health plan alongside a conventional plan and call the lower deductible plan a buy-up and the high deductible plan the core plan. And sometimes that higher deductible plan could be an HSA, or it might also be another PPO. These are things, I just kind of quickly did that because they're things that you probably have experienced. You already know how costs are increasing. You already know what these trends are. So you're probably already doing these things now. The question is, what do you do from here, and what kinds of things can be done to compensate for these dramatically increasing costs? Now we're going to cover three topics. We're going to talk about some creative approaches. Some of those you may be familiar with, but maybe not. We're going to talk about self-funding. If it's a particularly small group, that's not going to work, but interestingly enough, it could work where you might not think it would. And then some other special programs. So let's talk about the creative approaches first. There's the premium only at the bottom of this triangle, the flexible spending plan or the premium only plan. That's a no-brainer. Everybody should do that. There's a slide later that says just do it. Dual option, which I just briefly mentioned before, where you can give every employee may have different employees may have different needs. So a really high deductible plan for a young healthy person might suit their needs perfectly well because they don't use the health care all that much, whereas somebody who's got some health conditions and experienced quite a few things going on in their lives may want to opt for that buy-up plan and pay more for it. So the dual option makes some sense where we get away from the one plan or one size fits all concept. HRAs are health reimbursement arrangements. That's a way we found that we can help an employer save costs. I'll get into a little bit more detail on that. HSAs, it's got some long-term benefits where the notion of giving more control to the employee might change their habits that could have some bearing on long-term costs. And a stack plan is where one of these concepts may be stacked on top of another. So I gave you a real fast recap on all of these. There may be a point here that we can expand on a little bit. The premium only is basically under section 125. It means taxes can be saved if the plan is in place by the employer. Could save up to 35% on the payroll deduction. So when an employer was paying 100% of the premium, it didn't matter. But if the employer is now paying 50% and the employee is paying 50%, and that premium is $800, now $400 is coming out of a paycheck. If you get that $400 taken out of your paycheck tax-free, that's a great benefit. Flexible spending accounts, that's a supplemental way to enable a person to, as an employer you establish that, they can elect to put some money aside. That money that they put aside to pay for what they can pretty much plan for, such as if they know how much they're spending for pharmacy, and maybe if they know they're going to have some out-of-pocket expenses for dental or maybe vision, they can set that money aside, also tax-free. A little bit of a use or lose component to that, but nevertheless, these are both really, really good ways to save money. So I call those no-brainers. You should just do that. The dual option plans, I already mentioned, that's you can have two PPOs, a high one and a low one, or maybe an HSA and a PPO. The HRA, I've got a little illustration for how that can save money. And it works for groups with richer benefits. If they're already high deductibles, probably not going to work all that well. But let me give you the illustration that I put together here. The group would purchase a high deductible plan. They normally had a lower deductible plan, and they instead replace that with a higher deductible plan, and then create a reimbursement arrangement for the employee who actually exceeds a certain amount of deductible. Then the employer estimates the potential total reimbursement amount as a percent of the worst case scenario. Now I've got some numbers to show you. Then you proceed with that if the premium savings is greater than the reimbursement risk. If not, it's probably not going to work so well. So you communicate to the employees that what their obligation is and what their total out-of-pocket expense is. So here's the illustration I was going to, it's a little bit outdated, but at least conceptually I can explain it for you better. So this is a rich plan. Some employer has put a $500 deductible plan for the employees and a maximum out-of-pocket of $2,000. They got a drug card and so on and so forth. So he replaces that plan with an insured plan that has a $5,000 deductible. You communicate to the employee that they're going to have only $500 in deductible because there's going to be the ability to get some of the excess money back if you happen to go over $500. And in this particular case, the employer is going to give them 75% back of the difference. Here's the way that chart would look. There's going to be now 3 payers. Normally there's 2. You as the employee, if you're a patient, you get a bill and you pay part of it, and the insurance company pays part of it. Probably the insurance company doesn't pay all of it anymore. Maybe they used to, but not anymore. So in this particular illustration, in the first $500, the employee pays 100% of that because that's his deductible. We've communicated to him that's the deductible. Now the actual deductible of the company purchase was $5,000. So the employer isn't going to pay any part of that first $500, and neither is insurance. But if the claim goes between 500 and 5,000, and the employer has said, I'm going to reimburse 75% of that cost to you and leave you with an out-of-pocket expense of $11.25, the other 25%. And by the way, if you just add those two out-of-pocket expenses together, you get $5,000. So between the employee and the employer, they've satisfied the $5,000, but the employee still has a $500 deductible plan. And by the way, his original plan was a $2,000 max out of pocket. Now it's only $1,625, so it's actually a little bit better. And after that, if the expense is over $5,000, then the insurance company is going to pay the whole thing. But why would we do that? Well, in this particular case, this illustration we put together, it's got 5 singles and 14 families. That worst case scenario is $3,375 that the employer said, I'm going to pay it by reimbursing you. So you're going to get the bill for the $5,000. You're going to pay the first $500. They're going to give you a check. They'll reimburse you $3,375. So this is your net. All right. So the employer has a risk. Worst case scenario of all 5 employees plus all 14 family members at double that, because each person could accrue that much. So it's $111,000 maximum worst case claim. We've got some actuarial data that we use to determine what is that likelihood that it's going to be a certain amount of cost to the employer. Because now the employer has a premium to pay, but he's also got a liability. This is sort of a mini self-funded concept. In this particular instance, we determined that about 22% of this worst case scenario would occur, or roughly about a fourth of the people total are going to incur claims that are going to run over the $500 deductible. The only way I've ever explained to somebody who says, yes, but that worst case scenario could cost me $111,000. How that's going to happen probably is the whole company was going to go out on a picnic in a bus, and the bus crashed, and everybody had maximum claims. But I've never seen it happen. So the likelihood is maybe a fourth of them, or $24,000 will accrue in expenses. So now let's look at it this way. The rich plan costs about almost $250,000. The high deductible premium is $13,000 versus $19,000. Got some admin fees, and it comes up to total annual fixed cost of $167,000. Now we add in the likelihood that we're going to send do some reimbursement checks of $24,000. Comes up to $192,000 versus $228,000, or $36,000 back in the employer's pocket. Could be worse than that. Could be better. There's a little risk associated with that. But here's what the employer is going to be interested in seeing, because we said there's going to be about a 22% likelihood of having that reimbursement be in that range of 35. The reimbursement be in the range that we predicted, which is going to save about $36,000. Well, if there was 45%, roughly double the number of people having claims, you're still at $10,000 savings. So it's got to be somewhere in the vicinity of 60%. This is a factor that the employer is going to look at and say, that's a pretty good high risk, or it's a pretty good situation where the risk is low for a big payout and pretty high probability of saving some money. So they do a lot of the HRAs. And where they don't work is if you've already got a $5,000 deductible plan in the first place, we got nowhere to go. HSA, most people are familiar with those. Don't really need to explain that, but some people still have an objection to them. There's no first dollar benefits. There's no co-pays for drugs. There's no co-pays for office visits. It all goes toward the deductible. But if you put it together, you could probably have some changes in behavior in a variety of ways, because when people have an HSA, they have the notion that I'm sort of more in charge of my own health in a couple of ways. If I can stay healthy, I can save the money that's in my savings account. And if I live a better lifestyle, that's going to help. People with HSAs have a tendency to have a lower trend line on the increase in their costs. And so we often see lower renewals with the HSA plans. So, like I say, it may not initially save a lot of money for the employer to do that, but it could have long-term benefits that a lot of people recognize as a valid thing.
Now, are there, I've heard that there's some trends for doctors that absolutely only see HSA or out-of-pocket patients.
You haven't heard that.
Okay. I had heard, because they don't want to deal with the insurance companies or Medicare, and so they offer significantly reduced rates to reflect the savings that they have by not having to deal with
Cash people?
Yeah, just cash people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that could be.
Okay, but you haven't
I've not
heard.
seen it.
That'd be an advantage of the HSA, I guess.
Yeah, it's not a widespread thing, but there could be situations where that could be the case.
Depending on the area, a lot of places, I came from DC, a lot of the doctors were going towards, you had to be a participant of that practice, you had to pay an upfront large fee that was not part of your, you had to have insurance, but then you paid like $2,000 just to be a part of, be a patient in that practice.
And what about, I mean, do they?
Say DC?
Yeah.
Is it legal for doctors to offer one rate for insured customers and one rate for cash customers?
Yeah, they do that. There's nothing illegal about it.
Okay, I didn't know it.
My wife's doctor, when we changed our health plan, my wife's doctor didn't happen to be in the network. Everybody knows now you want to go to a network provider because there are discounts that the insurance companies offer. He wasn't in the network, and I told her, go to him and say, you're not in my network. Now I can either change doctors or you can take what I can pay. He said, fine, I'll take that. So, and another, one of my clients who has an HSA, and his wife was expecting a baby, went to the hospital, said, so this money's going to come out of my pocket, it's going to come out of my savings account, and he negotiated a significant reduction in costs. And so they are very negotiable.
Yeah, and you can negotiate after the fact. 13 years ago, we had twins.
Yeah.
They were born prematurely, and we went from the delivery room into the NICU. Through a swinging doors, we went from in-network to out-of-network, just like that. And so I had conversations and with them, and they said, well, we'll treat you as in-network, even in the NICU. I said, that's fine, how much is that? And then they told me how much it was going to be, because it was still over the usual and customary. And they weren't going to get, they weren't reducing their cost in that. I said, you know what, we'll pay you $50 a week. But, the rest of my life if I need to. And they called us back and they said, you know what, can you guys do $2,000 on each child? And it went from $20,000 a child down to $2,000 a child in 2 phone calls.
So at any rate, stack plan is when you take a couple of these concepts and layer one on top of the other. So you might have an HSA, and you may want to do reimbursement on top of the HSA. So that's what we're referring to as a stack plan. Okay, so here's a different concept that we're seeing that has changed dramatically most recently, but I have to say that in this audience, if the groups are small, it may not be workable, but here's what is interesting. There are companies now who are doing self-funded plans down to 5 employees. So if you got 2 or 3, probably not workable. If you got 5, it's now within the realm of possibility. Matter of fact, I have one client, we have quite a few self-funded clients, but I do have one with a group of 5 that's self-funded, and they had a successful year last year and renewed this next year. The way it has become possible for small groups to be self-funded is the introduction of plans or policies where they look just like a fully insured plan. They just pay a level, it's what they call level funded. They pay the same monthly premium that they would have paid before. It's just the way the money is broken up and the way it's allocated. So here's some advantages of self-funding. So if there's good claims experience, it could mean refunds. There's flexible plan designs. There's reports and information availability you don't get when you're fully insured. There are fewer Affordable Care Act taxes. That's worth 3 or 4% right there. It's underwritten, which is a good thing for a group that is pretty healthy. Because the Affordable Care Act now does not allow underwriting. Underwriting means evaluating the risk of the group and setting the premium. This is the old-fashioned way. You've been through this many times in the past. You had to fill out a health questionnaire. The health questionnaires went into underwriting, and they decided that the group had a risk factor of such and such. And if it was high, the premium was high. If it was low, the premium was low. And it was about a factor of 2, 2.3 difference between the best rate and the highest rate on a small group. But now, with the Affordable Care Act, and they can't underwrite for health, everybody can be issued the policy. Those rates are basically generally pretty high. It had to be high to compensate for that.
But we were going to save $2,500 a year. And keep
We're
it
really
running.
gonna go
Oh,
up
I'm sorry.
50% this year.
So
I'm sorry.
with self-funded plans which are underwritten, could be a good thing for your healthy group. And it's also not subject to some of the Affordable Care Act mandates. Well, let me just show you conceptually. When you have a fully insured plan, you pay a premium. 100% of that premium is gone. It's an expense, of course, that you can write off as an ordinary business expense, but the money's gone. If it's self-funded, the money gets split up at least 3 different ways. There's an administration fee. There's stop-loss insurance, which is why the small groups don't need to worry significantly about the high risk of being self-funded, because they set the stop-loss at a point where it's a tolerable figure and probably not worse than what it would have been if it was fully insured. So you do pay for insurance, but it's stop-loss insurance. Then about half the money goes into a claims fund. So that money is administered, administration is paid for as a separate thing, in paying the claims. If 30% of that money at the end of the year didn't get paid out because you had a good claims experience, that money, or a portion of that money, could very well be returned to you in the form of a refund. So that's why a lot of people like that. So it's a great way to reduce costs. Self-funding is going to come in a couple of different ways. There'll be bundled plans and unbundled plans. Usually this larger groups will have a third-party administrator, and then the stop loss is procured separately. The small groups, the 5, 10, 15, 20 life groups, most likely be handled by a specific set of companies. There's 3 or 4 that we work with all the time, and they do the whole thing. It's their stop loss insurance, their administration, and so end result, some little differences here and there, but it comes out to an advantage. The special programs I'm going to refer to, the first one here, the specialty programs, reference-based claims paying, is going to only apply to groups of at least 25 or 30 or higher. What this is it's a self-insured plan where the claims are paid reference to a known amount rather than a discount amount. So if you understand what the PPO, or the Preferred Provider Organization with discounts, is all about, what you understand is the insurance companies have negotiated with the providers, hospitals and doctors, and said, okay, whatever you submit as a reimbursement claim, we're only going to pay you 60% of that. You have to write off the rest. So if you're in a network and that doctor is participating, he has already agreed by agreement with the insurance company that he's going to do a write-off and charge you less. Here's the problem with that. You don't know where it started. So if they write 40% off of what kind of a number, it still may be a ridiculous number. You've probably seen these ridiculous numbers if you got any sort of a bill at all for a significant health claim. So the reference base, instead of taking a discount from a not well-known, understood number, takes a very well understood concept such as Medicare. All Medicare claims are known numbers. For every code, the Medicare claim is a number that everybody knows. So the insurance companies we work with will pay a percentage of the Medicare, a larger percentage, like maybe 150% of Medicare. But everybody knows what it is, and it generally comes out less than a discounted situation in a PPO. It's unique. It's not without some drawbacks because some providers don't accept it, and so it has to be something that is understood well in the beginning and well worked out. There are other kinds of neat things we could do, especially with self-funded plans, like we can arrange for collaboration with different urgent care situations where if you use a certain urgent care, we get you a better rate. Specialty pharmacy alternatives. Right now our agency is working with an entity that deals with very high-priced specialty drugs. So those specialty drugs could be in the thousands of dollars per month. And so this is an arrangement, again, with self-funded, that we can work out so that these specialty drugs can be paid for at a much lower cost. Ancillary, this is a lot, coming to the end of what I had to talk about. Ancillary plans like dental, disability, vision, and so on and so forth are very much appreciated by employees. If the employer can afford to keep them, that's great. Most are fairly straightforward, such as dental and vision. There's a twist to the disability I just want to point out in case anybody's not well aware of that. But there's a tax issue with disability. As an employer, if you pay the premium on a disability plan, the employee who becomes disabled gets the disability benefit taxed. If the employee pays the premium post-tax, not pre-tax, the benefit isn't taxed. So most disability benefits are around 60% of normal wage. 60% without tax is pretty close to what his net pay might have been in the first place. So it's a significant interest to the employee to have an arrangement such that it's not taxed. And that's pretty easily done by taxing the premium on W-2. So these are just examples of how we can work with employers to try to find ways to chip away at those high costs of employee benefits. That's all I had to talk about. So if you have any questions about any of that we talked about, now's the time. Yes?
So what would you recommend for this company that's 2 or 3 people?
Well, we have, matter of fact, I think I just counted up. We have 49 clients that have 2 to 4 employees. So we work with them the same way we do with any other. I can say in the current age of employee benefits changes, many of the large agencies, we're not a large agency, many of the large agencies will not work with them. In fact, I just heard recently that one of the largest agencies in the Dayton area we'll send a bill to a small group of two of $1,500 if you want to talk to them. We look at it this way, and in this environment, we're saying, look, we'll work with you if you only have a group of two, because someday you might have a group of 10, or 20, or 50. I've worked with groups before that started out small and ended up very nice. So we're not going to reject working with a group of two, but all the same plans, except for some of the ones that I talked about that I said specifically needed to be at least 25 or 30 people to employ, such as that reference-based claims paying. That's not going to work. But for any of the other concepts or any of the other ideas, we'll work with you the same way we work if the group is 50. We have a website, www.benefitbuilders.net. Don't put .com. If you put .com, it goes to an agency in California. We're the .net, benefitbuilders.net. Information there you can go to. I'll leave some cards here if you want to pick any of those up. But what I talked about was just general conceptual ways to look at how you can try to contain costs in this environment of employee benefits. And by the way, most employers will say employee benefits, with the exception of wage, it's the most expensive employee-related expense there is. I mean, you might pay other expenses like transportation or car expense or a variety of other things and things like that, but none of it matches the expense of the health care. And we're seeing now rates for families sometimes, depending on the situation, as high as $1,500, $2,000 a month per family. It's a lot.
2,000 easy, yeah, for a family of 5.
I know even the benefit packages for WBI, which is 25 people, it's just been a real struggle looking at how to make that attractive to retain the level of people that we try to hire.
And the sad part about that $2,000 a month, the family still probably has a deductible of like $2,500 or $5,000 or something crazy like that. So they're gonna spend like $10,000 before they get any benefit. Yeah, well, actually, you combine the premium and the expense together, it's like $20,000 to $25,000 for any benefit.
And if you are taking note of articles in the newspaper about what I should have said something about this as a trend early on, but the Affordable Care Act, also known as the Obamacare plan, was supposed to be affordable. Affordable Care Act. And where it's affordable, and the only place that it's affordable is if an individual is low enough pay that they can go onto the exchange on a website, run a website, and get a subsidy. I think most of the people that we deal with, and that probably in this group, are high tech, high paid, wouldn't qualify for this subsidy anyway. It's not cheaper, and in fact, more and more of the main companies are dropping out. United Healthcare announced some time ago they weren't going to participate. There's a recent article that Aetna is going to withdraw from most of the states that they're in. So, I don't know what the futurity is of this whole thing in terms of being able to be sustainable. And they also just announced that next year's rates are going to be double digit. All the ones that we are seeing right now that are coming up for renewal, the majority are all double digit. Anywhere from 10 to 25% increases. So it has caused us in our industry and our business to be very, very challenged. We represent the clients, and we're independent, so we work with any of the insurance companies. I'm not tied to particular insurance companies, or an insurance company. So we try to find the very best rates we can by shopping a variety of companies, and then we try to employ some of the concepts that I showed you here with the flexible spending, or HRA, or HSA, or any of the others, such as advising how to make disability benefits tax-free when you handle the when you handle the premium payment the right way. I've got one high-tech company that presented to their employees they weren't going to pay the premium anymore. Here's why. This is going to be a major advantage to you, and it all went voluntary at that point. And almost everybody recognized the value of doing that. So, anyway, any other questions? I appreciate the time.